everyone, welcome to PowerUp with MIDP, a podcast where we talk all about personal development and growth. And today in particular, we are going to be talking about the lockdown generation, studying the impact of the lockdown on our children from, as young as babies and toddlers all the way to teenagers. And to talk about this interesting topic with me today, I have two guests. The first one is Riyadh, who is a Director of Government Engagement with Mastercard, but Riyadh is also a parent at MIDP. You have your 13-year-old daughter who's doing competitive debating with us.
That's right.
Welcome to the show.
Thank
and
you.
We also have Aisha, who is an expert on early childhood development. Aisha is also the founder and principal of Kayangan Montessori.
Correct.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I don't want to waste time. I want to go right into this conversation. But before that, let's get to know your children a little bit. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about your kids. How old are they? How many children do they have? What are they like as a person? Maybe you can go first.
Okay, I have 5. They span from 11 to 22. So now, 4 years later, they're 15 till 26, 5 of them. 3 boys, 2 girls. First two are working, and then the last 3, the younger 3 are still at first year uni, A-levels and O-levels. So a handful, a variety of characters.
I assume they all have very different characters.
Extremely, yeah. If they're anything like their mom, who's quite dramatic, yeah, they are.
All right, that's good to know. What about you, Riyadh?
I'm not fortunate to have that many. I have one daughter. She's 13, turning 14 in a couple of weeks. She's now attending year 9 at an international school here in KL. She is an extrovert since birth, very outgoing. She has been participating in public speaking. She has her own YouTube channel. She has her own podcast. She speaks in forums as well, participating in children's rights forum, women's forums, and now she's very active in debates.
That's really good to know. I wish I was that active at that age. I want to start the conversation with understanding a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on our children generally, right? So the pandemic lasted around 3 years, and throughout that time, we were all stuck at home. Our work was essentially happening at home, their school happening at home, their playtime is no longer outside or in a playground. Everything essentially happens at home. And because of the fact that our daily routines and our day-to-day is now confined to the 4 walls of our homes, do you notice any difference essentially before the pandemic and during the pandemic?
Before the pandemic, life goes on. We all have our roles to play, students, etc. With my children, they had to follow my time, driving them around, things like that. So I think the pandemic, for everyone in any aspect as well, sort of accelerated a lot of things that was bound to happen. Suddenly we're in each other's faces and all that. So sure, there was a lot of I wouldn't say, unwanted changes or things like that. A lot of us were all in unfamiliar territory. Teachers, parents, employers, everybody, right? So we were like trying this and the other. So like for my children during the pandemic itself, it's like, I think they were like, very happy with online school, and for my middle boy, he went to college online. He never went into college itself, and all cameras closed. It was a bit bizarre and stuff, and we were doing international exams which weren't cancelled, so it was like a bit of a novelty to do exams online. During the pandemic, some of the things, they were not opposed to a lot of things. Even I suggested a few things like, let's do something different, and they were quite game for it. Exercise outdoors, indoors, in the garden, reading a play together. They were quite game for it because we just didn't know. Within our force, it was difficult to, the context is so much different. And then the control, their self-control is different. Life needs to go on. So upstairs was home, downstairs was work in school, right? So they had to say, so at home, sometimes you can just, can't handle it, just run into the room.
Yeah, you mentioned that they were game with the new things that you sort of like introduce,
Yeah,
like
they're older,
exercising
right? Yeah.
together in a home compound, for example. If it's not the pandemic, do you think they would have agreed to like working out together?
No, not at all.
Right. So they're
I don't
being
think
more
to see their
open.
mom with them.
Right.
In
So
the
they're
same
being more
frame.
open to spending time with their families,
I
right?
think,
Because you kind of like have to.
You can't, If you look here, there's somebody. You look here, there's somebody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think they kind of just accepted it, especially when they did get COVID and they got the pink tags, So the parents and the teachers, we didn't get it because we were responsible. So they got the pink tags. So the changes there was quite interesting to see, the like camaraderie of the siblings, the acceptance. They were testing each other out with the oximeter and whatever to make sure they can do the Mastercard thing, and of course access to all these devices.
That is so interesting. So they got closer together, right?
Yeah,
they
for me,
bonded
they got
better
closer together.
That's
and the
interesting.
time when the two, that was when we happened to have COVID together, and the two older ones who don't live at home anymore happened to be with us, So they had to live together, had to whatever. But when there were times when I was in and out of the pandemic, and they were in their own homes, it was quite nice to like meet online and watch a movie together. So I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that they want to spend time.
Yeah,
So
that's
quite
nice to hear.
Yeah.
So on top of the children sort of like spending more time together, they actually plan things out to bond and to, create more fun at home and things like that. I think that definitely sort of like created a more positive relationship amongst them, and that's nice to hear.
Yes.
What about you? What changes do you notice in your 13-year-old before the pandemic and during the pandemic?
Well, we were a bit fortunate because the pandemic happened when she has not reached teenage life yet. So, I think Aisha would know that it is much easier dealing with a non-teen. So my daughter Mariam, at the peak of the pandemic, it was 2020, right? She was 10 years old. Because we live in a condo, so it didn't really change much, because only that there were a few periods where we had to only stay at home. We can't go out with the compound, but there were some relaxes. From time to time, she's able to go out and mix with other kids within the condo. So it was not so much of a great constraint on her. No, what we did was that we put her into an online international school. So this particular school is based out of UK, and the class starts at 8 p.m. onwards it starts at 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. So during the daytime, because I'm at home, I get to spend more time with her. So she participates in my work as well. She sits next to me doing her work, and she could hear the meetings that attendance and all that. She could hear things, and then in between my meetings, she would ask me things, and then we would discuss serious things. At that time it was a bit of a political.
I remember.
We were a lot because before Mastercard, I was working with a government agency, so I was part of the government. So we are part of the group that came up with all the SOPs, policies, and all that. So there was a lot of discussions on policies of the government, how we try to relax the MCO, things
so
like that.
So she saw all that.
She heard all that. We discussed, because she is very inquisitive, so she likes to know what is going on, things like that. And then when she gets online with her friends, she would ask what's happening in the UK. Because it's not just the UK, the students are from America, Russia, so many from Russia, from Italy and all that. So they would discuss. So it's a lot of conversation that she said, oh, in Malaysia, I said, you are revealing government secrets. So she'll discuss with her friends. This is what Malaysia is doing, what you guys are doing, things like that. So there's a lot of discussions going on, and I would say that the pandemic was a blessing in disguise, because we kind of changed the way, and I could spend more time. Where before this, I could only see her during weekends and only after work. And now mother is also happy that daddy is home, and she doesn't have to deal with her all the time. So she's always in my room, sitting next to me every day. And during weekends, I can get time to assist her with her YouTube and podcast, things like that.
That's really awesome. So the pandemic essentially had given your daughter the opportunity to sit through your work and experience that work life. And then because she was also in an environment where, you know, online school had became acceptable at the time.
Yeah.
And then she, you know, could experience and share that with, you know, friends essentially from all over the world. And I could, like, I think theorize that had it not been the pandemic, parents might not be as open to sending children to like an online school, right? Yeah. So a lot of opportunities here, I think, you know, in the household itself, which really is nice to hear.
It necessitates some sort of creativity on our part as parents.
Right. Yeah, and exploration of new things, right? Like you were talking about as well. So there's this survey, and it was done by IOE and the Institute of Fiscal Studies, and it showed that the lockdown affected the emotional development of children in their formative years. So it contributes to things like anxiety, lack of confidence, you know, like mood changes and things like that. So I want to hear from you. Can you share some unique challenges that you face in, you know, parenting your children during the pandemic? And do you notice any specific challenges when it comes to nurturing their confidence and their self-esteem?
You see, I guess it depends from families, from schools, how they do things, you know. I'm a bit of a keposhi mom, but I try and do it in a way that makes them a bit comfortable, hopefully. But as usual, you know, the dynamics between mom and child, especially that in a nurturing, you want to be involved in their learning, etc., is a bit of a, that's already a bit of a challenge. Okay, so for me, what helps most of all during then when there is a challenge is to communicate, and it helped that we had to, because there's only one TV, only one laptop. My motto in life has always been let's just chill and be peaceful. If you must make a lot of noise and stuff, step outside, you know. And I always think that nature is good for children, so that they do kind of calm down. And I think the challenge was for the younger children. It's a different environment, and so it really depends whether they have been allowed to have a voice.
Do you think they're more stressed out during the pandemic because you're kind of like stuck at home, can't go out, can't meet their friends? Do you think
absolutely? I was blamed for everything, like most of the mothers, fathers. You know, I want to go outside, cannot. You want to play football outside, cannot. We kind of had to manage the household a bit more. Okay, your turn to cook lunch. Okay, you took over this. I mean, one thing that I appreciated the pandemic was the realization of the roles that you need to play in a family. The context of
like
that.
Everyone has got to play a part. So for you, it's essentially given your family the opportunity to discover the importance of communication, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you notice any specific challenges, especially in terms of maintaining that confidence? Because your daughter is already an extrovert. Navigating through the lockdown, do you notice any impact to her confidence, or maybe she gets demotivated at a certain time?
No, fortunately, no. In fact, I think she built up upon to be more confident during the pandemic, because we started homeschooling her. Actually, we didn't send her to a preschool. We have a bit of an unorthodox way of raising her. So she did not grow up with TV. You know, we threw out the TV when she was born. She didn't have any phones or laptop or nothing, no games.
So there's no TV at home?
No TV at home.
I can't imagine that.
When she was small, we would take her out more, do a lot of outdoor work. During the pandemic, because of the nature of the schooling that she attended, she kind of adapted to it, where she gets to meet more friends from different nationalities, and her mindset grew, and her worldview also grew.
But generally, in terms of her like self-esteem, right? So has she ever gone through a period where she's struggling with something and eventually managed to like kind of like get a hold of things throughout the pandemic?
She was playing music before this, and then, you know, the piano teacher couldn't come home, so we had to stop that. And then she could not do sports anymore, so that kind of stopped. And the only way that she could get active is to follow me to climb up the stairs of the condo, up and down, and that's the only way we can sweat ourselves. But apart from that, we every day is always planning what's next, what's the next day we've got to do, but there's always that anticipation that this lockdown will ease, soon we'll get to go out. But so thankfully enough, every 3-4 months there will be a change in the rules, and
Yes.
I mean, it reminded me of like every time we go through something difficult in our lives, and the best advice is usually that you just have to go through it.
Yes.
And you'll come out the other end, right? Yeah. But the act of like actually going through it is obviously, I would say, the most difficult.
Actually, because I work in a learning center, so we found that having to do online with the children from like 6 to 10 and what have you, we do see a lot from the child's point of view. So the communication was important to let them know and do this. So the teachers, the parents talking to the children and saying, remember this routine, remember we do this together, and reassuring, that helped them with their confidence a bit. Communication is so important so that they can respond to it. Because suddenly you're here and then they're looking at you for, well, how are you going to respond? They also need to know how to do that. So what we found was whenever they feel bad, mad, sad and scared, that they need to tell us. So we'll end each day with, have you been feeling this way? Can you tell us about it?
That's really nice to hear. So, I mean, parents now have no choice but to be that much more engaged and involved in their children's life, like you shared earlier, right? And I think a lot of parents throughout the pandemic and afterwards sort of like shared with me, and they said things like, oh, I have to explore so many new things, and I have to learn about how to respond to their work and how to respond when they don't know how to do their work. Because before this, you might not see them going through all of that. You're at work and they're in school, they're doing their work, and the teachers is managing all of that. So now, like when they come to their parents and they say, Mom, Dad, I really don't know how to do this. And then parents now have to respond. I think it puts parents in this, situation where they have to play a more active role and they have to get to know a bit better, amp up their skills to engage with the children a bit more as well.
If I could ask, Aisha, I mean, how do you keep that engagement with parents during the pandemic?
So, like with the younger ones, we gave a lot of advice on podcasts and say, anytime when you're free, do this. Because, you can't expect a 3 or 4-year-old to sit in front of the monitor for 3 hours or so. So do it throughout the day as and when you can. It's quite flexible. For the older ones, we gave children assignments that obviously required the parents to be involved. Make lunch or art and craft. But we always gave the bottom line messages. This creates focus, concentration. This creates a Socratic mind. Tell the parents what their role was. For example, when we went to school, so when I went to school, I learned ABC. Children now, they learn ahbaka. So parents, some of them are panicking. We say, actually, it's not that difficult. This is how you do it. Okay? And then when you do it in the way that you enjoy being with your children, you've got to be one of them. Not be with them, but be them.
Like be as curious as them.
Yeah, especially when they're... And you have to understand why a child is sniffing the sofa or licking the colourful handkerchief, or licking the colourful cloth or whatever it is, because that's how they learn. In order for the child to flourish, that you are willing to be just like that child, as that child, and be willing to do what you'd like that child to do.
That is such good advice.
So if you want the child to eat vegetables, then you got to eat vegetables. And you want not to eat chocolate.
So that's the modeling part.
The modeling.
You can't just be telling kids what to do and you don't
exactly.
do it. So I have like parents who say like, oh, don't watch the TV, you got to read your book. You switch off the TV. You read the book. And
read your books, right?
Yes.
Nurturing and raising confident kids is not easy. And it is one of the challenges that a lot of parents face, where they will ask, how can I get my children to be more out there, more confident, more outspoken? Or at least if they're outspoken now, there's a basis in the things that they're talking about. And I think a common theme that parents talk about is there is a noticeable difference between children you know, when they go through the pandemic, maybe they go out, they're not as sociable anymore, or they're a bit more awkward in an environment where they have to physically socialize with people and things like that. So what can be done as an educator, as parents, to kind of like nurture that confidence and ease them back into like face-to-face interaction post-pandemic, right? I would like to hear from the perspective of an educator first.
Right. So essentially, at the end of the day, you're going to make them feel that they discover the joy of doing it. What I did with the children was to give them reassurance that, you know, you're you. I don't know how to explain it. If you can feel yourself, I had to explain it in Malay. It was something like, okay, so like to feel the cupness of this cup, to feel this is 1, 2, 3, 4, to feel the oneness of one and the two-ness of two, to feel the untuk mengalami keriadan Riyadh, right? To feel you. How to get that? You
Like
need to have
everything that is you.
absolutely, and that you're valid. You have a voice. You have a beautiful mind. You have everything, and to let them know that you can have an opinion. So when they have an opinion, they can gauge. Okay, this is too dangerous. This is too hot. This is that, and so you're empowering them. So when you're empowering them, they acquire that control, and control is king. So if they can take their bicycle to go down the road and go a bit further every single day, right? Because they feel that they are brave and they are courageous, we encourage them more and more.
I think essentially it's about empowering them to explore and experience things on their own, right? And I think it's very important for children to be given that sense of control, but also that sense of that their parents trust them. There's this very famous research, right, when they talk about the difference between children, if they are raised in an environment where everything is no, don't do that, jangan buat, don't do this, don't do that, they will grow to be more reserved, a bit more scared of failures, a bit more scared of mistakes, and not willing to try. So I like what you said about, I guess the most wonderful thing you can give to any children, be it at home or at school, is to trust in themselves, to explore and experiment, and to know that their parents and their teachers will be there for them no matter what happens.
Absolutely. One good debate you can have is, do we bring up children based on wanting to discipline them, or based on whether they can learn how to reason? It can go on. It really is a huge debate.
What about you? What are some of the things you do to build their confidence?
Well, many of my friends did ask me about sharing notes on how we raise our kids. Many people ask, how is yours? Very confident. Mine is not so much. Mine is so introvert, doesn't talk. There's no straight answer to this. I remember sending her to all these dramas when she was 4 or 5 years old. She would just cry back to us and say she's scared of the stage and all that. But we just did a whole lot of tough love on her. You know, we don't accept any crying. You go back to your stage and then perform. So bit by bit, she overcome that. And that is something perhaps may work, may not work. I don't know. It depends on kids. But one thing that I did, but what I see different from my other friends, is that I expose her a lot to different segment of society. You know, I didn't just allow her to mix amongst her friends. I would also bring her to meet up with my friends and to participate in conversations as well. My daughter is mixed parentage. My wife is Korean, so we go back to Korea every year, and she can see the whole of different culture. When we go back to Korea, you can see that her cousins are very obedient type, you know, who do not answer back. Whatever the parents say, they'll do it, and they will just study up until 11 o'clock. You know, after school, you know how Koreans are.
Yeah, they have like the school after school.
After school up at 11 o'clock and all that, and they do not question their parents. You know, that's something that both my wife and I do not want. We encourage her to question the things that we ask her to do. You know, when we tell her something, we'll give her the reason why we don't want her to do something. And that's the same thing, that the struggle that we face when we say that no iPad, no phone, when all your friends have phones and iPad. get your kids away from social media or reduce as much as possible, because once they are only in the world of virtual world, they have a much difficulty interacting in the real physical world.
Yes.
Yeah, so we didn't allow her to have social media. Now she has, because of the YouTube, Spotify, and all that. She has to engage with the audience.
Yes.
Right.
But it is all monitored, you know. We have a TV now, because after the pandemic, we have a TV, and we connect her laptop to the big TV. So whatever she does, we will check.
Oh, interesting.
It is totally monitored and supervised, the things that she does, and well, a certain time we say that off, she will off it. She understands. So that's the difference we see. That you know, so many kids, we see that after school they'll be on their phone. You go to the restaurants and all that. You see parents, all the children are all on their phone. They don't interact.
Yeah.
So we don't like that. I mean, there has to be physical interaction. She has to participate, even if she's with my friends, among the uncles and aunties and all that. She will participate. She's been taught to participate in conversation. Although in our society, it's like apa budak-budak ni cakap ni. I say, why are you menyampuk?
Yes, menyampuk. That's the word I was
That's
looking
right.
for.
Yeah.
So menyampuk
we
orang
have to
tua,
allow.
right?
They have to participate. If they don't participate, you know, then they'll be so shy.
Yeah.
They get reserved, and then they start to wonder. If they don't have a phone, they don't know what to think. So
What to do.
What to do. Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
This is one of the reasons why I love talking to parents, because everyone's parenting style is so different and they're effective for different reasons. So like you said earlier, right? As parents, you also have to kind of experiment with what work, what don't work, and sometimes you push them, and sometimes maybe you have to pull it back in a little bit. And I think all of these things also put a lot of pressure on parents, because you're constantly wondering, am I making the right move? Am I pushing too hard? Am I pushing too little? Is it okay that, you know, my kids don't have a phone when literally every single one of her friends you know, have phones and things like that? So I imagine that process can also be scary for parents. So I want to ask this as parents to both of you. Obviously, the pandemic is like an unknown territory. We were taking it day by day, challenges as they come and things like that. How do you, as a parent, cope with that, I guess, pressure to do right, to make sure that you do it, you know, to do the best for your children? How do you cope with that pressure?
Well, I think, you know, I'm comforted with the fact that I hope everybody wants to do what's right or what's good, and as opposed to what's not good. So with the pandemic and all that, I think it just accelerated it all, because we needed to speak to each other more, we needed to talk to each other more, we need to, you know, I mean, post-pandemic now, as you say, everybody's on the phones and not talking to each other and things like that. And then they wonder why the children's not developing, because they haven't been given an opportunity to talk and all that. So it was a challenge. I think it continues to be a parental challenge. You know, children are very clever, as we all know. We have to act like we know what we're doing as well, you know, or not let on that we don't know too much, you know. So, you know, we have to play along. So, you know, the children now today, even my very cheeky youngest boy, 18, yesterday he just pretended to freeze, you know. I said, stop it. Okay, there's no such freezing now. You have to answer my question, right? So, you know, so, you know, I think that essentially you've got to go with the flow and not think that it's impossible. Children will have to see us keep thriving. Who else is there for them? We have to advocate for them.
I love that.
So that they will learn to advocate for themselves.
You have to share, you have to care, you have to keep trying, you have to keep showing up and keep participating, because like you said earlier, at the end of the day, parents model the things that you want your children to pick up, right? So for you, I would imagine just keep doing it and communicate and learn from there and just keep going.
We're able to cheer them on.
What about you? How do you cope with the pressure of being a parent, of raising a kid?
I'm lucky that my wife is a full-time mother. She's always there with my daughter. And I also know that I have a duty to calm things down when I come back, because of the tension of mother and daughter is always there, especially a Korean mother. If you watch K-dramas, you'll know.
Okay, I have to go back and up my K-drama game.
So I mean, when pandemic happened, so it's like nothing is new. Let's go back to what we did before. But the only thing that we will do it differently because we are not able to meet up with our friends. Let's try to do it online, and let's try to open up your worldview and then get you on online with an international online classes. So that's how we coped with it.
At the end of the day, parents are also human beings. And to feel that a little stressed out, I think it's the most human reaction, right? Stress is there. You don't have a choice. You have to do it. Family have to be together, have to do family things and things like that, but things can be difficult.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a difficult day in the office and it kind of like impacted maybe your conversation at home, for example. So I guess my question is more of how do you deal with these stresses as they come up on a day-to-day basis?
I tend to leave my work stress out when I go home. When I drive home, I know back in mind that if I were to bring my stress home, it will not be fair on them.
So
So
compartmentalize that.
compartmentalize, leave it at home. So when I'm also stressed out when working from home during the pandemic, when I switch off at 5 o'clock and that's it, you know, I don't get myself too much bothered about the things that I have had to deal with during the daytime.
So there's a recurring theme in what you both talk about, which is be present, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Be there, be engaging, participate, be there.
Yeah.
And I think essentially, like you said, of course, you're going to have different stresses in your day-to-day, but essentially try to compartmentalize, and whatever little time you get to spend with your children, make the most out of it. It sounds so cheesy, but it's so true, right?
Simple as that. Yeah.
When I was growing up, it was not acceptable to kind of like take a plate and eat before everyone else. Or like when everyone else is eating, you say, I don't want to makan now. And then when people are done and I'm like, oh mom, I'm hungry now. No.
Kitchen's closed.
Yeah. Like
literally.
My mom would be like, no, it's okay. Even if you don't want to eat, just come and sit together, you know? Or you can snack on like things, whatever, but sit together as a family, you get to talk. What that taught me, which I thought was the most valuable, is to actually care about what my siblings have to go through. Because as a child, your world seems like the most important thing, right? I have school, I have homework, like I have this, I have that, I care about all of these things. So when my mom made us all sit down together and I had to listen to my sister's update, my brother's update, my mom's update, and I was like, oh, okay, so they have things in their lives too, right? It breeds that understanding. So I really like dinner together.
Especially for raising an only child, I know there will be challenges because it's her and her alone. It's all my world, right? So that's why for us, we try to make her not feel that so entitled from time to time. And then, you know, we kind of volunteered her for nanny job whenever there's a neighbor looking out for a nanny. So you go.
Yeah.
They're looking for a babysitter. So you go and take care of
Teaching her
them.
monetizing her time.
Wonderful. I said you can make money.
You know, financial independence is so important.
Yeah.
So she loves kids.
Yeah.
She loves kids. You know, she'll take care of 4 or 5-year-old kids, love her and all that. Oh, that's great. That's great.
I want to move on to the final part of this conversation. If you could give like one advice to parents, what would that advice be?
One main advice would be to be your child's cheerleader. You know, no matter at what age, being interested in what they do, what they're good at, what they're naturally good at, what they're weak at, and understand. So just be their cheerleader and communicate. For me, I feel that's the most
like
important.
You don't have to be there all the time,
Yeah.
but pick a time that you can allocate for them.
Yes.
And during that time, be present, be engaging, and be their cheerleader
Absolutely.
throughout that process.
Yes.
I like that.
My advice to new parents, you may come from different background. You know, I surely have experienced that. I came from a different background. My wife came from a different background. We have decided to discard on how our parents have raised us. And we hit the books, we read up. And I think the best advice was how our Prophet has taught us on how to raise a child. Be their best friend when they are up to 7 years old.
That's right.
Discipline them thereafter. Give them time, understand, be their friend. And from time to time, if they don't want to speak, okay, not now. Don't force them. But after that, go back to them and say, why? Why don't you want to do it? So be their cheerleader, motivate always. But there are always different phases on how you treat them. And they're up to 7 years old, you have to treat them differently. You have to care for them, manja them a lot. But after that, you got the discipline, and after that, after they're teen,
like teach them a sense of responsibility and accountability.
Once they reach teen onwards, you have to be their best friend. Because once there's a void in that there's no best friend at home, they'll find best friend outside. And you're lucky if that best friend outside is a good-mannered person. If that person is a bit not so good, you'll tend to follow that.
That is so important, right? So whatever they are interested in, whatever activities, they can talk about it with their parents at home, and they know they can be excited about it together.
When you start to discipline them too much and start to shout at them, you are erecting a barrier, and that sense of camaraderie, friendship, and all that relationship will be lost.
So I like what you said about ending the cycle of how both of you and your wife were raised, and having a conversation as spouses, I suppose, on how are we going to raise our children, right? Because we're not just going to blindly follow parenting tips of the previous generations. And I guess hopefully when they become parents, they will also revisit that and say, based on all of the new discoveries and what are the tips and tricks that I'm going to retain, what are the new practices I'm going to adopt, and things like that.
When my daughter was born, iPad was just introduced. Parents were so happy. I don't have to bother about them when they eat. I'll just put an iPad in front, they'll just eat. We took a step back.
So parenting, you cannot go with the flow. You have to plan.
You got to evaluate. What is the repercussion of this?
Absolutely.
Later they'll be so divorced from the world.
Absolutely, yeah. The children need to. It would be good for everyone to understand that everybody is in touch with the real thing, nature, and all that. Because from my experience, watching children, even children with special needs, just put them in nature. That's the batteries. Like how we walk barefoot on the grass, grounding and all that. I believe it all works. I mean, we're talking about devices and screens, etc., and should we or shouldn't we? There are many, many other aspects of life that we need to look. It's important to look into, like diet. How are we feeding our children? The mental health. How are we speaking to our children? All that stuff. So I think the community as a whole. It's good for the spouses, definitely as parents, say, okay, this is how we do it together. It's good, but it goes bigger than that. Because as you say, the child doesn't like something or other, and if you say no too much, they'll go somewhere else. So hopefully the community also will be, good enough for them to realize that, actually you shouldn't do that. And we as parents have to feel the pain of sometimes letting them go. Okay, they feel the mistakes, and when they come back, and we have to have the no ego and not say I told you so. Say how was it? Come tell me about it. How was your age?
Right.
I think it's parents, especially in our community here in Malaysia. When we talk about children's needs, a lot of things being neglected, so they turn into law. There's children's rights, but rights comes with responsibility. Children need to be responsible. But a lot of our communities still don't understand that, right? Hak kanak-kanak, apa hak? Ini anak saya, hak saya. So that is a tough one. But for me, I found it an amazing a journey to understand and say, actually, the parenting was a lot more easier when you understand about each other, expectations from each other, and doing things together. A lot of things, the amount of things you learn from your children, it's a lot, it's amazing. It's good to be with them at the same time, to have that ring of communication, that bond, etc., that we're into this together.
If they do not have the confidence, the social skills and all that, how are they going to survive in the world out there? Because if you emphasize a lot on academics alone on them, and they do not know how to interact, they do not know how to speak out there, whatever that they're doing, I can do better. So humans, we have to go back to the core of being a human. It is social skills and social interactions.
Absolutely, agree, 100%.
I like that. So there's a bit of a gem that I want to also bring back, that what you said about not being judgmental, right? So let them do it. If they get it wrong, don't say I told you so.
Yeah.
Be curious about them. Be curious
Yes.
about the things they are curious about. Be their best friends. Be there for them, and essentially like prepare them. And I think all of these things, right? Because if they have this environment to flourish really at home, then they should be able to be confident outside of the home as well. They should trust in themselves outside of the home as well. And I think those are some really great tips and tricks that you have shared. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
That
you.
wraps up our conversation today. So hopefully everyone who's listening out there can, relate or can disagree if they want to, and can, take a little bit of what you said and practice them in their day-to-day. So hopefully it's going to be useful for someone out there. All right. This has been episode 2 of Power Up with MIDP. I hope you've had a great time. I definitely have. Until next time, to different topics, and hopefully we'll cross paths again. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.